And that's why I love football, because it's all fun and games until you buckle that chin strap and you're ready to hit somebody. You know, how do you react when you get popped in the chin?
All right, we are back for another episode of Under the Number after a long hiatus. We had our chat with Kenyon Drake back in September after another hiatus before that, but we're hoping this will get us kind of back on the horse here. I'm joined by my cousin, one of my best friends in the world, Christopher Lane. If you know him, you love him. Welcome, Chris.
Brent, man, it's great to be on with you. I'm so excited to talk about everything in the world of college football, obviously. And I just admire what you're doing with Under the Number. It's so unique to see different perspectives, different stories. It's just an incredible thing you're doing.
Well, I also got to plug your podcast, The Chris Lane Show. What you'll notice, the difference, my job is very easy on this podcast. I generally just sit back and ask questions, interview series. Chris is such a mountain of football knowledge that he's able to just rip monologues on any subject. He can go solo, he can go deep, he'll bring people into. It's not always just by himself, but check out the Chris Lane Show as well. It's well worth many listens.
There we go. Yeah, no, y'all give it a listen. I'm on a hiatus myself. I think the last time I did an episode was like, I want to say week 4 of the college football season. I did do a bracket prediction before the season started.
Well, I'm feeling kind of rejuvenated in my fandom and my love for football after this event that I had the pleasure and the privilege of attending last week. And we'll dive into that a little bit. But we're also going to dive in this episode to the CFP and actually get a breakdown from a very knowledgeable fan who's followed along a lot more closely, honestly, than I have throughout this season across the teams across every conference. And unfortunately for him, his Ole Miss Rebels did not quite make the cut, but we're going to move on and just get down to the brass tacks details of what to expect and some predictions around this college football playoff, which kicks off this Friday.
Yep, I'm very excited about that. And before, obviously we'll get into that later, but the last time we spoke, I was on vacation with my family, and I get a text from you, and it's a picture of you and Jackson Dart. And I mean, obviously, me, Dad, and Merrick are like, "Oh my God, you're with the QB1 of the Ole Miss Rebels." If you don't mind, Pat, I actually don't know what you were up to, so please fill me in on where were you, what were you doing, who were you there with? I mean, please just give me the story. I mean, I was so jealous because I was zooming in on people in the background of the photo, and I was like, "Yep, there's Jalen Milroe. Yep, this guy, that guy." So yeah, please fill me in, fill your audience in on where were you? Because I was very jealous.
So that was the ultimate work perk for a football fan. I got the opportunity for the second year. Actually, I was able to go last year as well. That was in Las Vegas at the College Football Hall of Fame inaugural dinner, and it's literally a black tie dinner where they announce each year's inductees to the College Football Hall of Fame. It's truly, maybe if you went to the NFL Hall of Fame induction stuff in Canton, or if you got to hang out at the Heisman ceremonies in New York, maybe that would top this. But I truly think this is like the absolute mecca for football, for a football fan. It was paradise. I mean, everywhere I looked, there were the young guns. There was Jackson Dart. I sent you that picture. I chatted with him for a while. Dylan Gabriel, Jalen Milroe, they were all up for the Campbell Trophy, which is not the Heisman, though it may, I mean, depending on who you ask, it might even be a somehow greater honor because it's this combination of the award celebrates a combo of the best football player, athlete, the best football player, the best student athlete, so the best kind of academic performer, and also acknowledges kind of community involvement and other things that people do outside of ball. And so those guys were all up for the award. Milroe ended up winning it, but absolutely insane event. I can tell you a little bit more about some of the people who were walking around, but the reason I was there is my boss at work is on the board of the National Football Foundation, which is the nonprofit entity or organization that actually kind of runs the College Football Hall of Fame and this dinner behind the scenes. So both this year and last year ended up being, hey, he said, I know you're a big football guys guy, but you have, he said, I have an extra spot at my table. Would you like to take it? It's like, yes, absolutely. I bought my flight 10 minutes later. So
Yeah,
that
I
was
would have
that.
walked there. If I got invited, I would have walked to wherever the destination is. It could have been in Alaska, and I would have walked.
It truly is like to say you're a kid in a candy shop. I've never been more, that kind of figure of speech has never been more accurate for anything in my life. Particularly last year when I didn't know what to expect. This year I at least knew going into it what it would be like. But one, the format. This year was in the Bellagio. Last year it was at the Aria, I believe. You walk in, and before the dinner, there's this kind of cocktail hour, more than an hour, and a silent auction going on where there are all these crazy pieces of memorabilia and art and things that people can bid on, and that all of those proceeds go to the National Football Foundation. But this is just in a ballroom in a hotel, and all of the guys are there. All of this year's honorees, the people who are up for the Campbell Award, their families, their siblings. Jackson Dart has a brother who looks exactly like him, so maybe that's good fortune for Ole Miss going forward. He's like a smaller version. He's got the same kind of Gen Z mullet going on. They're both rocking it, and but you just cruise around and like you can walk up and just tap anyone on the shoulder. Like I'm walking around that thing. My boss hadn't even come down yet, and I just walked up. That was when I talked to Jackson Dart. That was when I talked to Jalen Milroe. That was when I said what's up to Charles Woodson, Brady Quinn, like all of these guys. I had seen Archie Manning earlier that morning, who obviously from the Newman and New Orleans connection. I saw him just in the the coffee lounge that was set up for the event. But no, it's nuts, and the list goes on and on. I can rattle off some more, but it's nuts.
Who's your favorite person that you met that you might have not met in years prior, or someone that when you talk to him, you're like, God, like it's probably the coolest guy I've ever met.
Well, I'll get to who that is. First, I just have to say Archie Manning, who I'd met many times in New Orleans at the Manning Passing Academy back in the day. There have been several.
That was great times.
Yeah, where I was with you in whatever that was, 2011 or 12.
Yeah.
Archie Manning is the chairman of the NFF board, and he is such a legend among legends. It is wild. There are college football and NFL Hall of Famers who are at that event who are essentially like sheepishly standing in line to see if they could possibly borrow Archie for 5 seconds to say hello, maybe get a picture. And he's just sitting there or standing there, just basically it's like a greeting line, just waiting, legend after legend after legend. They can't believe, I'm talking about like the Charles Woodsons of the world and these people in just like absolute legends in their own right cannot wait to meet Archie. This year, I think the person who probably had the most star power of the crew was probably Larry Fitzgerald. That's who was getting inducted. I think Randy Moss would have been at that same caliber. Unfortunately, we all learned a couple days later he's battling this cancer diagnosis, so hopefully everything goes okay there. He was not there in person. Larry Fitzgerald is just like larger than life. I was telling somebody, I think he literally might have the best reputation of any athlete like ever. It seems like anyone who's ever met or dealt with the guy freaking loves him. And it came across when I got to chat with him for, a minute or two at the event.
Yeah, I will say I do miss seeing a player like Larry Fitzgerald on Sundays. He was fun to watch too.
Best stat. I think he might have the best stat in NFL history. Do you know what it is?
What?
More tackles than drops in his career.
That's a crazy stat.
Yeah. The other one that was pretty surreal was Ronnie Lott walked up to our table at the end and chatted for a second. Just legend. I mean, the whole event, like Charles Davis is the MC. So if you're a football guy, that's already pretty cool. He's so good at that job.
Yeah.
I mean, when I walked up to say hello to Brady Quinn, I had to basically cut in on Urban Meyer, who he was chopping it up with. Like, it's just everywhere you look. And just literally just to rattle off some names while I'm thinking of it, just from this year, and this is a combination of Campbell Award finalists and inductees and people who are just hanging around, and whether they're formerly, already in the Hall of Fame or associated with the NFF. You obviously had Archie Manning. You have Archie Griffin, who's always cruising around, the only 2-time Heisman winner. Dart, Milroe, and Dylan Gabriel were all up for that award, among many other great players. There were some offensive linemen from Texas and Ohio State, and even some D2 and D3 guys, which is pretty cool. They get to sit up there with those dudes because they don't really discriminate by what conference or what even division you're playing in. If you are that guy who meets that, player, student, community member criteria, you get nominated, which I can only imagine how cool that is for the quarterback from Slippery Rock University who was up there, for example. Like,
That's pretty cool.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I got to walk up. These people are all just in the same room. They're at the same dinner. Alex Smith, Andrew Luck, Brady Quinn, as I mentioned, Larry Fitzgerald, as I mentioned, Julius Peppers, who won this year's, I think, biggest human award for the event. It was insane.
I guess that's a pretty big guy.
He's huge. Like, it looked bizarre. It was like a giant among these people. I mean, I sent you a picture. He was sitting next to Paul Puslesny, and he stood next to Paul Puslesny. Paul looked like an elf next to him.
I literally was. Yeah, I said that because I remember the photo you sent me. You're like, yeah, that's Julius Peppers. I'm like, oh my god.
Warwick Dunn, he was inducted this year. And then there were just the football guys, like guys who didn't necessarily pan out in the NFL, like Toby Gerhart, shout out to Stanford, legend, ultimate football guy. Danny Woodhead, obviously he did pan out in the NFL, but Danny Woodhead was there, which was kind of surreal.
Yeah.
Who else? Paul Puslesny, legend.
Yeah.
But that went on. And I mean, the year before, the class was so epic for people who are our age and the era of college football that we grew up with. In one class, included last year up on the stage, included Reggie Bush, Tim Tebow, Vince Young, Luke Kuechly, Brian Westbrook, Eric Berry, Dwight Freeney, D'Angelo Williams. I mean, the list, LaMichael James, Bryant McKinney, who might be, or was it McKinley?
It's McKinney.
Bryant McKinney. He was the biggest. I mean, he was the one dwarfing everyone else next to him on stage last year. And then you have these legendary coaches cruising around. Steve Spurrier is walking around, Philip Fulmer, Dabo, Mark Richt. Like, they're all just all in one room. It's absolutely insane.
Who was the one person there that you tried to run into but just couldn't get the chance to shake hands with?
Last year, I remember wishing I had gone up to Dwight Freeney, just because I grew up such a Colts fan in that Peyton Manning era and watched so many of his games, and I just didn't get the chance. Last year, two of the nominees for that Campbell Award were Ladd McConkey, who I did talk to briefly, and Bo Nix. I didn't get the chance to say hello to him. I was like in an elevator with he and his whole family, but I didn't chat him up. Peyton Manning was also there last year, my favorite player of all time. Yeah. So that was great to quickly say hello to him. Gosh, this year, I mean, some of the really old school guys like Archie Griffin, I don't really know what I would even say to them other than just be in awe of their legend status. Kind of like Ronnie Lott, who knows my boss from something else. So that's kind of why he came right up to the table. Maybe some of the coaches too. I mean, like Spurrier is just such a football guy. It's insane.
Spurrier reminds me a lot of how Lane Kiffin is now, but he was like, the guy who's, in the media saying things they probably shouldn't say, or taking jabs at other teams, or just kind of just being a good, funny guy. I mean, he's not a mean guy per se, but if you look at interviews of stuff that he was saying when he was a coach at Florida and a coach at South Carolina, he was a funny dude in interviews. That's definitely another guy I wish I could meet myself, because him and Lane Kiffin to me have a lot of personality similarities.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, my head was spinning for days afterwards. It's so cool. All the guys are, not to mention you're catching them at a fantastic time. They're all in such a good mood. They're like having a cocktail and they're getting inducted to the Hall of Fame. So they're so game to chat anyone up who wants to take a minute just to talk. So it was awesome. And I wish I wasn't there alone. I wish I could have shared it with a few people closer to my age. I mean, it was very nice of my boss to invite me. Right. But I was just kind of cruising around, solo mission with all these legends walking around. So
did they say where it is next year, or?
I know that they renewed the contract with the city of Las Vegas for several more years. It used to be in New York, apparently.
Okay.
But it's in Vegas. It's a great setting for it. It's pretty cool. You walk up and down the strip during the day. And for those players, I mean, they're getting like the Times Square treatment, the Vegas strip equivalent. Their face is plastered on everything and lighting up these gigantic screens. I don't know that it'll be at the Bellagio necessarily. I'm sure all the hotels bid for it, but that's a Vegas event through 2027 or something.
I sweet. Really, one day I'll find a way to get into that building, man. I'll
Hey,
find a way.
okay,
I don't know
okay.
what it'll take, but
That's actually a good point to make because I heard this could be total misinformation. I heard this from somebody at the event. They said you can actually come to that dinner. And he said, look, listen, you'll see a guy from like Ohio State get some award or get inducted, and that some raucous table, we were at table 15, very close to the front. You'll hear from table like 165 in the back, just going nuts. And it's just like a bunch of average Joes who went to Vegas, threw on a tux or at least a suit, and went in. I don't know if they had to pay something or what, but it was, if that guy was right at all, there were some rowdy people in the back. So maybe if there's a big Ole Miss inductee or something, you have to go for Deuce McAllister.
I know that. I mean, it's either him or Eli Manning in my mind when it comes to just guys that'll be in upper nomination. I can't even. Maybe Dexter McCluster or I mean, I don't know if they'll have Chad Kelly there or not. I know.
I think Eli is. You can bank on that, and maybe Deuce.
Yeah, I think so.
But it's crazy. I mean, they also are inducting some people who literally played in the 50s. Like, I don't know how they even decide. It sounds like a very difficult process. There are some people, they show the highlights from each player on this giant screen as they're getting their plaque and their name called. And it's just, they do such a good job with these crazy super cuts and surround sound in this big theater type ballroom. And the players are, their wives are there, their kids are there. It's so cool to see. And it's such a crazy thing. Greatest work perk ever. I don't know that I'll ever have one that lives up to it.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I think all the listeners that are listening to this wish they were there too.
Had to be there, bro.
Yeah, had to be there.
All right, changing gears to the CFP. Let's just kick it off before we even look at the bracket. Who was your biggest surprise this year?
I think we all got to go with Arizona State. With what Kenny Dillingham is doing there, he's really changed the entire culture there at Arizona State. You got, Cam Scatabo, this running back, who ran for, I swear, it looks like he runs for 2,000 yards. I don't know if that's his stat, but this guy will play on Sundays. He will run you over. He'll jump over you. He'll outrun you. I don't know if you saw it's funny, I say Big 12 when I talk about Arizona State, but when they were in the Big 12 championship game against Iowa State, they would give him the ball. I think he had like 30 plus touches, and he was just like, you're not going to tackle me today. It was one of the crazier performances I watched. I would say Arizona State for sure on that one. And I just love their culture. I mean, it was funny. I saw something earlier today. Everything with the transfer portal going on right now. You got players whose schools are in the playoffs, but they're still entering the portal because they want to be able to get, that opportunity to start elsewhere. And the window starts now. So, it's just that's a whole other conversation we could get into. But when they were interviewing with Dillingham, the coach, he was like, yeah, we got one guy who's committed to Florida State, but he's practicing with us and he still wants to be on the team. Like that's so rare in this era of college football for them to not only have, yes, the guys transferring after the season, but for him to be like, yeah, I'm going to finish this out with my brothers on the gridiron. Really cool. It's just a testament to his culture that he's brought there. I love Dillingham. I think he's a phenomenal coach, and them getting the bye, I think will help them in preparation between both Clemson and Texas. Although both those teams have some serious firepower to them. If I had to think about another school, honestly, I think I'm not saying I'm surprised Boise State's in. Don't get me wrong. I'm surprised that they got a bye. I was really hoping for them to get a home playoff game in that blue turf in the winter against like an SEC school, a school that doesn't really like the cold, that's not really ready for it. But instead, I think they're playing the Fiesta Bowl, so they'll be in warm weather. But man, I love that running back, Ashton John T. If the Saints can find a way to get him, we can just slowly tell Alvin Kamara you could take less touches and you'll still be great. But we got this other guy, Ashton John T. I think he's a stud. I love him. He was my vote for Heisman. No disrespect to Travis Hunter, but just for those listening, do me a favor and just watch Ashton John T's season highlights for this year. It's literally a video game. Awesome guy.
There's a couple of things on what you just said. One, going back to that guy Scatabo, I
Yeah.
saw a run from his high school highlight tape that I somehow hadn't seen until literally this week. Shout out to Dylan Johnson, DM'd it to me. It is, yeah, I don't know that I've ever seen a better run at any level of football in my life. And so you watch him in that Big 12 championship game refusing to go down. I mean, I can clip it. I mean, this high school thing, I think every single person on the defense had a chance to tackle him. And he just would not be denied for like 65 yards, whatever it was. The next thing, to your point about Boise hosting a game in the snow on the blue turf against some like SEC opponent or even a Big Ten opponent, even if it was against like a Penn State, that would be the type of game and setting that in this new, totally, changed landscape of college football would be having fans. I would be doing a double take every time I came back from commercial. I'd be like, what am I looking at? What is this matchup this time of year on the blue turf? Like, there have been a handful of matchups like that already, like Stanford Syracuse, for example, earlier this year. That was one where I was just like, what is the Cardinal doing at the Carrier Dome? This is just so bizarre. That would be peak, conference realignment. What the hell is going on?
I'm with you there. And to go back to Arizona State as well one more time, the one person I also forgot to talk about is this freshman quarterback, Sam Levitt. Another guy to look out for the college football playoff. I think if they can find a way for him to kind of, you want Scatabo to get his touches, but if Sam Levitt can find a way to get the ball out where it needs to go and make those ad-lib throws, he's a kind of a running quarterback, very athletic. I really think Arizona State can give Texas and or Clemson, whoever wins that game. I mean, it's not going to be an easy win for Texas or Clemson. Don't get me wrong. I mean, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, they're gonna bring their A game.
Okay, so you have ASU as your biggest surprise. Who was your biggest lock going into the season? You just thought there's no chance that these guys don't end up with a bye.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was Oregon. I absolutely love what they're doing at Oregon. No, so with Dylan Gabriel, when you think about it, him at Oklahoma, the first time that I saw him play, and I really appreciated his game was that game against Texas in the Red River Shootout. You were actually with me. We were going to watch the Ole Miss Arkansas game. It was that 11 a.m. kick, and it was back and forth, Texas, Oklahoma, boom, boom, boom. And this guy, when Texas scored, he did not give a rip about the fact that they scored. He just puts his helmet on. And he goes, "We're ready to rock, and we're going to win this football game." And he drove down. I'm pretty sure he had a long, 40-yard run too, to set up for that game-winning touchdown pass in the corner of the end zone to beat Texas. And I remember Margaret was sad, but in my head I was like, "Damn, that quarterback is damn good. Like, he is so good." And for him to go to Oregon under Dan Lanning and company, what Dan Lanning is doing at Oregon is fantastic. I hope he stays the coach there forever, because you're when you're looking at it from an SEC side, you think of the West Coast as like, finesse, soft, like, just we're gonna throw it all over the yard, we're gonna beat you by points. But man, this Dan Lanning guy, he comes in there and he's like, you know what, we're gonna instill toughness. We're gonna beat you up on the field, and then we'll throw the ball. So for him to get Dylan Gabriel in from Oklahoma and Evan Stewart from Texas A&M, and also they got, I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, but Mateo Uyangalele, he has to be related to DJ, right? From
I haven't run into any
any other
Uyungleleles in my day-to-day life, so I would think so, but
yeah,
you never.
and the way that Dan Lanning has operated that defense, they run just multiple different coverages. They confuse the hell out of everybody. And so for me, they also, honorable mention, former Ole Miss safety Tyshim Johnson is at Oregon as well. And I just think that it's just a bunch of great defensive, strong, physical, fast. And Dan Lanning knows how to motivate them too. Whenever you get the chance, Brent, you got to watch the motivational speech that he had in one of the meetings. I can't remember if it was like a morning meeting, afternoon meeting. They had, it was a clip from the movie Inglourious Bastards, where the guy with the baseball bat, he's tapping it on the side, and he comes out and he's basically relating that to be like, all right, which linebacker wants the baseball bat to knock some heads in for the football game, and it hands over to their linebacker Bryce. I think his last name's Bodter. I'm pronouncing that wrong, but it's him just in the tunnel going on the field with a baseball bat, just clink, 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 clink. And I literally, when I saw that video, I was about to go to Eugene and throw on a helmet and get on the field. I was like, I had goosebumps thinking about just the way it's just such a cool thing for someone like Dan Lanning, a coach, is able to get into a player's mental and psyche so deep that it makes them just want to absolutely go through a brick wall. So I don't mean to get off on a tangent for you, Brent, but I think the biggest lock was Oregon. I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, Oregon was getting in the playoff, whether they have a bye or were hosting, which bad day for whoever wants to go to Autzen Stadium in Eugene. I mean, that place gets electric. So I really, really thought Oregon was that lock. And then, everyone else was also like, maybe, Georgia was locked too. But after they lost to Ole Miss, I mean, it was like kind of still in the air if they were going to get in or not. But then they found a way to get back in. So
well, I mean, also in part due to them hanging on by the thread of all threads in the 8 overtime Georgia Tech game that we watched together. I mean, that wouldn't have instilled a ton of confidence in me if I was a diehard Georgia fan.
Right. And so, but the thing is, they kind of lucked out. They get a Sugar Bowl bid. They're on a bye, and they play the winner of Notre Dame and Indiana, which we'll get into those two teams later on. But I really think if Georgia can just, I know Carson Beck got hurt in that SEC championship game, but this guy, Gunnar Stockton, the backup, he comes in that second half against Texas and does everything correctly, does not make a mistake. He just stays in his own lane. And
he had one bad pick. He did have one bad pick.
Oh, he did have that bad pick. Excuse me.
But I thought he made up for it when he took the stick of the season, which somehow was not a targeting call, and just popped right up. That was, if I'm on that team, on that sideline, I'm like, let's go.
And if you look at the photo closely on Twitter, it looked like his eyes were like a chameleon. They were all over the place. I'm like, this guy's concussed. You need to pull him out. Like, what the hell?
He looked like Sid the Sloth from Ice Age coming out from that hit.
His eyes were like out here after the hit. I'm like, oh, God. That was the wildest hit I've ever seen.
Yeah, well, I mean, your point about Dan Lanning in Oregon, and just sometimes those you see a program that just has this crazy aura and juice about them that's just kind of infused, and it starts with the coach and trickles down to the quarterback and the captains, and then it just, hopefully, if you're lucky, it runs throughout basically every layer of your team. I have to say, from just a pure juice perspective, and to defend the West Coast a little bit, I kind of think Oregon, Arizona State, and Boise State, those are kind of the juice programs in this bracket. Doesn't mean they're going to win. Doesn't mean they're the best. But as far as pure juice and, relatively warranted hype, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Tell me I'm wrong if I am.
No, you're right. And they're also just really easy to root for. The success stories of, Dillingham and Dan Lanning and the head coach for Boise State, I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head, but, you have Ashton Jeanty, their running back, who could have gone anywhere in the transfer portal. I mean, you had guys all over him like white on rice. And he's like, no, I'm going to the place that believed in me before anyone else did. And that's Boise State, and I'm going to stay here. And the one thing that I love about Ashton Jeanty, and I don't mean to go off on a tangent on him, if you look at all the Heisman Trophy nominees that were in New York, you have, Travis Hunter in designer clothes. You have Dylan Gabriel, designer clothes. Cam Ward, designer clothes. Ashton Jeanty's wearing his Boise State athletic gear, just repping the university. I was like, this guy, how could you hate this guy? He's just an incredible dude. I mean, you can just tell. He oozes just an awesome, loving personality. Absolutely love Jeanty. I could go on and on about it, I swear.
I mean, who was the last guy who did that? What came to mind for me was Lamar Jackson. He wore an $89 suit from Macy's to his Heisman Trophy presentation. Things have worked out for him, so maybe that's a good sign.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just, what really, as an Ole Miss fan who has no, skin in the game in the playoffs, I'm really rooting for these success stories. I always have, I always will. I just love that, it's kind of like an American hero almost, like Dan Lanning having to travel all over the world. His wife gets sick. He then, goes to become the defensive coordinator for Georgia. They win a national championship game because that was the best defense in college football history, the 2021 Georgia defense. And then he gets this opportunity as head coach to go up to Eugene, Oregon, and he's doing it his way. And I think that's just an absolutely amazing story and incredible thing for, just for all the young aspiring grad assistants to look at. They're like, wow, this guy really he brought his shovel to work and started digging.
There are so many built-in narratives like that. You don't have to. Sometimes you hear broadcasters or media people reaching to concoct some sort of a story. You don't have to make anything up with college football. It's like this is why people fall in love, get obsessed, and can't take their eyes off it. It's just so there's oftentimes so much depth to what's going on behind these programs. It's freaking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just for 1 second here, because obviously I would assume the program you watched the most sheer minutes and hours of this year was Ole Miss.
Yep.
Not to dwell on a sore subject. If you were Ole Miss though, and you had in an alternate universe made it into the CFP, I'm looking at the lower seeds in each of the four, first round matchups. You have Tennessee in the 9-8 game. You have Clemson in the 12-5 game against Texas. You have Indiana at the 10-7 game against Notre Dame, and SMU in the 11-6 game against Penn State. What of those teams would you have wanted to play the least? Who would you have been the most scared of?
I would say Tennessee. I absolutely love Josh Heupel, the Nico Amialavea. I hope I pronounced that last name correctly. Quarterback, absolute stud. But the one person out of everyone at Tennessee that people have not talked about the most is their running back Dylan Sampson. This guy, I'm pretty sure he's like 1,500 yards rushing, multiple touchdowns. They've had a really good offensive line this year, but the fact that Dylan Sampson didn't get enough love for the Heisman or the Doak Walker Award is honestly kind of offensive for your regular everyday football guy. He's going to be a very good running back in the NFL, in my opinion. And I think Tennessee going to the shoe. It's funny. I read something on Twitter where Ohio State Ross Bjork, the AD, is like no one sell your tickets. Tennessee fans are going to buy it, and all these Ohio State fans on Twitter, they were like, "No, like we already have that home field advantage." I'm like, "No, no." I used to live in Nashville. Those guys would go on horseback to Columbus, Ohio, to go to that game. If you look at Tennessee away games, like the big games that they've played in, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there is a ton of orange, and they're the away team. Like you're going to notice this Saturday the amount of orange in that stadium. They travel, and Tennessee is basically, and I have some Tennessee friends, so they're going to hate me for this, but their level of fan base is basically Alabama, LSU, SC, Ohio State. That level, they just don't have the national championships to show it. And but I think with as long as they have Heupel as their coach, I think they'll get theirs. I think they'll win one at some point. Maybe it's not this year, but man, if I'm Ohio State after the loss to Michigan and not being able to play in the conference championship game, Tennessee is basically Michigan from a physicality standpoint, and they can throw it all over the field. So I don't. I looked at the line of the game, and Tennessee was favored by a touchdown, a 7.5 or something. I really don't understand why. I think this is going to be a very even game, and I mean, I have Tennessee winning that game, honestly. So do not want to play Tennessee if I'm Ole Miss.
If you're Oregon, who would you rather see? Do you want to have to beat Ohio State for the second time, or do you want to play this dangerous Tennessee game?
I honestly want to play Ohio State again. I think Tennessee matches up from a physicality standpoint. Their defense, they got this guy, James Peus Jr., their defensive end. He's going to be like a top 5 pick. They have great linebackers. They not only that, they have good depth. They really did a good job in recruiting these young freshman defensive backs, such as Farouk and Boo Carter, and they got this other linebacker. I'm forgetting his name, but Tennessee, this defense is not a one-trick pony. I mean, Josh Heupel is really honed in. Like, hey, we see Georgia winning national championships because of defense, and Alabama because of defense, and Michigan because of defense. We need to be in that number too. So I really think they've done a good job at not only starting off the year with a good defense, but I think they're really building on the future with some key pieces. Yeah, I really don't want or I want Oregon to do well, and I do not want them to play Tennessee because of it. As a result of it, excuse me.
A quick hit here. Raw thoughts on Notre Dame, high level.
High level, they are. This is my thing with Notre Dame. The Riley Leonard transfer piece was huge from the guy from Duke. you could tell he's so poised in the pocket. And the one thing that I need to see still from Notre Dame is who is that number one receiver? Because right now, to me, it's their tight end. I think his last name is Meyer, Mitchell Meyer, or trying to remember off the top of my head. Um, their tight end is a stud, but they really lean on Julian Love and or no Jeremiah Love and this other running back. I'm trying to remember. Notre Dame is if they want to go to the national championship game, they're going to have to play physical football on the defensive side. They're going to have to really hone in on the run game, and that play action bootleg. Riley Leonard's an athlete, so he can take off and run. But what's really the biggest question I have is who's gonna be that receiver for Notre Dame that can really take off and be that deep threat and when you need a third down and it's third and long, like who's gonna get that one-on-one 50-50 ball? So that's my only question mark with Notre Dame. Otherwise, love Marcus Freeman. Absolutely love their running game. I mean, they always have the big boys up front that you want. I mean, you could literally start all five of those offensive linemen in the NFL today. I mean, they are that good on the line, in my opinion.
What does SMU have to do to beat Penn State? What has to happen for the Ponies?
It's funny. I don't think it's this like crazy thing if I woke up on Sunday morning and checked the score and it says SMU won the football game. For me, Penn State, everybody talks about Ryan Day and, oh my God, he's on the hot seat. He loses to Michigan again. That whole thing to me has been a total smoke grenade for the fact that James Franklin hasn't won anything in the Big Ten. And I'll never forget last year they played Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl, and they were this favorite team. They're favored by 5 or something. And I'm looking at it, I'm talking to my dad, and I'm like, there is no way on God's green earth they're going to beat Ole Miss. They cannot win the big one. I don't understand. And look, I respect Drew Aller's game. I respect James Franklin as a coach, but they say history tends to repeat itself in football. And I think if with SMU, I think the best thing that could happen to SMU is that second half against Clemson when they were getting killed. I don't know what Rhett Lashley said at halftime, but those guys came out with a physicality. They didn't have to throw it all over the field like they usually do in their air raid offense. They established the run game, and they were able to just play within themselves and play smart football. I think for SMU, just match up physically because they did with Clemson. I mean, they only lost by a field goal. I think if you can match up with Clemson physically, you can match up with Penn State physically, and I think as a result, I think like SMU is not this. I don't see them as this like it's a miracle if they win. I think I have a lot of respect for Rhett Lashley and the way he's really created this offense. Kind of last year it was kind of from scratch, and then now it's this year. He starts out with a quarterback. I think his name's Peyton Stone. The quarterback. They were kind of loosen. Kind of saw some weaknesses here and there, and then Brett Lashley's like, I'm going to the other quarterback, Kevin Jennings. And ever since, they've been lights out. And so I have so much respect for him to be like, yeah, we're going to change quarterbacks on this one. And ever since then, they've been good. And I love their team. I think to answer your question, they just got to match up physically. If they have their entire defense is seniors except for one player is a junior. So these guys, it's their last hurrah no matter what. And so SMU's going to go into that game. I think the best thing that can happen to SMU as well is the fact that Happy Valley is happening during the day and not at night. And I think they're going to take advantage of that.
That's a very good point. I mean, hopefully there's no team requires a rah-rah halftime speech. If you can't get juiced up for the CFP, you don't deserve it. So,
right.
Okay, we're whipping our way around. I've watched more Texas football this year than I have in probably any other year, having married into this Longhorn heavy family. I have to say, I've not been super impressed with the Longhorns. Sorry, Tyler Greenwald, Austin King, many others to apologize to with that take potentially. But
I haven't either.
Particularly in the last game, I mean, Ewers did not play inspiring football. And I mean, we know he has all the physical tools. He just was playing with no confidence. Like some of these super late floated throws to the sideline where he's getting picked. I mean, it's like, that's a pick in JV in high school. It was clearly a mental thing where it seemed like he was just really off of his mental game and just not really locked in.
Yeah.
What does Texas, assuming Texas does just out athlete, out physical, and outdo Clemson, which is what I expect to happen, even if it's ugly, maybe they'll come out and just be an inspired team. Who knows? What does Texas have to show you in the Clemson game to make you a believer and to be inspired by this Longhorns team and to once again believe that they might be as dangerous as people thought they were at the beginning of the season?
Well, it's funny how you brought up mental when it comes to Quinn Ewers, because for those who don't know, he actually lost in the state championship at his high school to, guess who? Cade Klubnik, the quarterback for Clemson. So a Westlake versus, I think it's South Carroll High School.
South Lake Carroll, the
South
Dragons.
Lake Carroll, yep.
Yeah.
And Quinn Ewers lost to Cade Klubnik in the state championship game. So
That's good. That's good context there.
yeah, so for when it comes to mental approach, I think Quinn Ewers is having a mental breakdown because he literally already lost to Cade Klubnik. But he's at his home place. I think what's really going to help Texas is can they get off the field on third down on defense? Not only that, can they on the offensive side? They run a lot of these. It's a lot of misdirections. They're throwing out to the flat. They're throwing and it's like a hitch route. They run the ball well. They really do. And I was totally wrong about Texas when it comes to the run game after C.J. Baxter got injured. Um, you you kind of had a question mark on who's going to be that bell cow, right? And I think with this running back Wisner and Jadon Blue, kind of the 1-2 punch. They've been awesome this year for Texas. I mean, lights out. I've a lot of respect for the way that Steve Sarkisian can really manipulate front seven into thinking that they might be running one way, but they're going the other. I think Quinn Ewers just needs to literally just step into the pocket and throw that intermediate pass. I think what we haven't seen much of Quinn Ewers, maybe I'm blind, I don't know, but between the linebackers and the safeties, I don't see a lot of completed passes over the middle. I feel like he's too timid to take that pass. And when you have to go play Oregon, and if they go to the semifinal, and Oregon's in the semifinal, you got to play Oregon or Tennessee or Ohio State. And those linebackers and free safeties, the windows are only going to get tighter for them, right? And so I think for a game against Clemson, a team with a great defense already, in my opinion. I mean, remember the name Barrett Carter and T.J. Parker two linebackers on the side, absolute studs. Love those two; they're great. But they're going to be flying at all cylinders for the game. So yeah, like I said, Quinn just needs to step in that pocket and let it rip. It's one of my favorite sayings. It was in the Florida Gators documentary when they talked about Urban Meyer.
Swamp Kings.
Yeah, the Swamp Kings documentary.
Yeah.
Urban Meyer, when he first started coaching for Florida, he was kind of overthinking it, right? He was just basically just like, he was too timid on his play calling. And one of his mentors, I forget the guy's name, just hands him a slip, and it just says, "Let that effort go." And I think that's if Quinn Ewers can let that effort go, I think Texas can win the whole thing. I really do. But everything for Texas, it falls on Quinn Ewers. It just does.
All right. I agree. That's definitely the it factor for them.
Yeah.
Okay. Between Tennessee and Ohio State, answer this question. Whichever team does blank has the chance to run away with it.
Run the ball. It's totally between Dylan Sampson at Tennessee and then Quinton Judkins and Travion Henderson at Ohio State. Who can get the 5 yards per carry? You don't even have to break a long one. Just get to that second and medium, that third and short. That's really what it's going to go down to for them. Just who can run the ball more effectively.
What is the biggest vulnerability that Notre Dame has in looking at this matchup against Indiana?
I think it's just that's a great question. I think the one thing for Notre Dame is the explosiveness of their offense. I think can they find a way to create, they're going to run the ball well, and they're going to figure out ways to get those two running backs a lot of touches. But can they run that play action and have that receiver run 50 yards for a touchdown? Like, can they do that on Saturday or Friday? Excuse me.
Yeah, ability to break it open here and there. All right, so we just went around the horn on those round one matchups. I want to go through every team in the bracket kind of a lightning round here and get like a word association game,
Yep.
one word reaction response to each team. Starting off, we're going to go lowest seeded to most highly seeded. So Clemson,
Battering ram.
SMU,
Finesse.
Indiana,
Wit.
Tennessee,
Show who's boss.
Ohio State,
Save yourself.
Notre Dame,
I would say resilient.
Penn State,
When is it coming?
Texas,
Prove your worth.
ASU,
We're here to party.
Boise State,
Campus legend.
Georgia,
Don't overthink it.
Oregon.
Time is now.
Nicely done. All right. Well, let's wrap it up. I want to hear your picks. Let's just go through. I'll take you through it. We go step by step here. Indiana, Notre Dame. Final score. Who wins?
I'm gonna have Notre Dame win this one. I think it's gonna be a slow start. You gotta see Kirk Cignetti, what they've done at Indiana. He's a great coach. He just is. I love the guy. I think Notre Dame's gonna out physical them the whole game. I would say Notre Dame wins 38-20.
SMU, Penn State.
I got SMU winning this one. I think Penn State is going to try and be too aggressive. I think SMU is going to make them pay for it. I have SMU winning in a close one. I have them winning on the score of 35-28.
All right, that's kind of a lot of points. I like it.
Yeah.
Clemson, Texas.
Low score. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. I think Clemson's going to come out strong and try and play physical football as well. Try and run the ball with Maffa, their running back. I think if for Cade Klubnik to want to win this game, he's going to need to use his legs and try and find a way to, have those ad lib throws. When the play breaks down, what can you do with your legs? I think that's going to be the big difference. But I think Texas just has too many athletes on the defensive side for Clemson. I mean, Clemson has two starters that are freshmen at wide receiver, and the other one's a sophomore. Like, they're just too young on the perimeter. So I have Texas winning in this one, like 24-10.
I think I know the answer here. Tennessee, Ohio State.
I have Tennessee winning. I do not understand how Ohio State's favored over them. If you're going to try and get in this, fist fight with Tennessee, they're going to beat them up. So I think Ohio State's going to change their game plan and try and throw it to the receivers. I mean, they have great receivers, Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Ibaka. Both. I mean, they're going to be. It's the next Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson type thing. So I think Tennessee's going to win because they're going to slow the game down, and I think Tennessee wins by a score of like 31-20. I think they're going to be by 10. Yeah, I really don't see Ohio State winning in a close one. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Moving on, round 2. Notre Dame, Georgia.
So this one's in the Sugar Bowl. I won't be attending that game. I usually go to Sugar Bowls, but I think I'm going to avoid a bunch of dogs barking at me. So I think what's going to come down to is Carson Beck healthy, and can Notre Dame find a way to get the perimeter game going with Riley Leonard and all the receivers that they have. And because I will say this, after watching the Georgia Tech Georgia game and the Ole Miss Georgia game, you can run the ball on Georgia. You can. I mean, it's not this 2021 defense where it's just a steel curtain,
Yeah.
So this game's going to be closer than people think. I think you're going to have a lot of moments in the game where special teams is going to make the difference, like field position wise. Who's going to start at the 1 yard line rather than who starts at the 30. I think you're going to see that a lot. But I think Georgia, what the difference is Georgia's defense on the perimeter side being able to just kind of keep Notre Dame one dimensional. And so I have Georgia in a close one. Like, I think Georgia's going to it's going to be like game winning field goal, kick the field goal to win kind of thing. I would say Georgia wins like 31-28, if not like 24-21, in that range.
Boise State, SMU.
If this is the matchup, I might buy a ticket. I really would love to go see that game. See Ashton Jeanty play potentially one more time. I love the way SMU exploits defenses in different coverages. They know what coverage they're running. Brett Lashley, who was the offensive coordinator of Miami when they had Derek King, they throw up 50 points a game. Now he goes to SMU, and he has this guy, Kevin Jennings, who's a stud. I think SMU wins this one over Boise State just based on, can Boise State be able to, kind of like the Georgia Notre Dame game? Can they keep them one-dimensional and just be able to run the football? I don't know if they can. I don't know if this secondary is experienced. Just the amount of it's not about the player, right? I mean, you're not hearing about an SMU wide receiver. It's all the receivers on the field, the different route trees that they're running to exploit different coverages. And SMU does that better than any team in the country, in my opinion. So I have SMU. Yeah, I think they're going to win in a close one. I think you're going to see Jeanty rush for like 300 yards. And I think the only way Boise State, it would be so fitting if Boise State was able to run the same play in this Fiesta Bowl as they did Oklahoma to win. But I think it's going to be close, and I think SMU ends up winning.
What's your score?
I think it's going to be high scoring. I think it'll be like 45-40.
Okay. ASU, Texas.
I think with Arizona, I think it comes down to can Levitt, their quarterback, can he make the throws necessary to keep him going down the field? Scatabo is going to get his touches, the running back. I just don't know. I haven't been too fond of the Big 12 this year, personally. I think it's been a lot of very weak teams in the conference. And I think I think the matchup for Texas playing Arizona is a lot easier than the Clemson matchup, in my opinion. So I think Texas handles business. They win by like anywhere between 17 to 21 points. If I had to throw a number per side, I would say like 41-14, 41-20 kind of game.
So you think Texas handles them a lot easier than they handle Clemson?
Yeah, and I think that's because Clemson's defense, they have a lot of good players on their defensive side. And I think Clemson's going to be able to slow the game down with their running back Maffa. And Cade Klubnik, people forget, he's very good with his legs too. So I think Clemson is the harder opponent than Arizona State. I think it's going to remind me a lot of like the LSU Clemson national championship game for Texas Arizona, in the sense of people are like, oh, like, Clemson was up 14-13 on LSU in like the end of the first or early second quarter. And then, then it just was like halftime adjustments. Boom, we're going to exploit you. I think Texas will score more points in the second half than the first.
Okay. Tennessee, Oregon.
Game of the year by far. So Oregon and Tennessee in the Rose Bowl. The granddaddy of them all, the mecca of college football. I think the edge with Oregon over Tennessee is going to be Dylan Gabriel's experience over Nico's experience.
Did I hear, is Dylan Gabriel about to break the record for the most starts in the history of college football?
Yeah, I think so.
Shout out to Yogi Roth. I think I heard that on his podcast.
Yeah, I mean,
he's breaking Bo Nix's record.
Who was the Oregon quarterback last year. That's awesome. I think the difference of that game is going to be quarterback experience. I think Dylan Gabriel he's been in college football as long as I've been alive, I feel like. He understands situation football. I think obviously from a talent aspect, Nico Amialabea is the better quarterback. Don't get me wrong. But I think what it's going to come down to that last drive after, let's say Tennessee scores in the Rose Bowl, and it's going to make one great photo of him throwing it down the sideline to like Evan Stewart and for them to win the football game. I think that will be a lower scoring game than people think. I think that will be like a 28, 24 game, or it goes to overtime and it's like 35-28, which I'm wrong. That's actually pretty high scoring, but it's not going to be like 50-50.
To your point about how long Dylan Gabriel has been playing college football, he was at UCF in 2019. The few players who were playing in 2019 include Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Jamar Chase, Travis Etienne, T. Higgins, Chase Young, Kayvon Thibodeau, Jonathan Taylor, Tua. It's like,
Yeah.
guy's been around the block. I don't see him being, overly nervous in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I have no answer for that. Like, when you're playing an opponent of a guy who should be crushing spreadsheets by now in year 3 of crushing spreadsheets, Dylan Gabriel just what is that? We're 6th year.
Some of the other dudes in his recruiting class who were ranked far ahead of him: George Pickens, Kayvon Thibodeau, Spencer Rattler, Bo Nix, Garrett Wilson. I mean, it's crazy. The guy has been around. Graham Mertz, who's also been around. Jaden Daniels, Zach Charbonnet.
Like, bro, literally get a LinkedIn account. I don't.
Yeah. So we get the picture. He's been around. Okay. So you've got Oregon. You've got Oregon winning that one.
Yeah, and the only difference, I think both teams are very, very similar in style of play. They want to run the football first, and then, they run a lot of RPO as well, run pass option for those who might not know on who's listening. And I really think it just goes down to who gets the ball last, and is it Dylan Gabriel or Nico Amilavea? And I think if I had to put money on it, I would put money on experience.
All right, let's rattle through these next ones. We're in the semis here. SMU, Georgia.
I would say the biggest thing for me for SMU to try and win this one over Georgia would be, can Keyshawn Smith, can Roderick Daniels, can Moochie Dixon, can they line up and win those 50-50 balls on Malachi Starks and Everett and Dan Jackson, KJ Bolden? Can they win those 50-50 balls? And not only that, but you need Kevin Jennings to kind of play kind of like how Haynes King did for Georgia Tech in that Georgia Tech-Georgia game, being able to run the football, the quarterback, and the running back as well. So that's going to be a really interesting game if they were to play each other, obviously. I would probably lean on Georgia's secondary to perform in this one. Not only that, we don't really know if Beck's going to play that game or if it's going to be Gunnar Stockton still. But I don't think that necessarily matters because Nate Frazier, Trevor Etienne, I mean, these guys can really pound the football. You're going to see just a huge mismatch from the offensive line for Georgia with SMU's defensive line. If SMU can get them off on third down with their very seasoned veteran defense, it could be a close game, but I think Georgia wins this one. I would say roughly like 41-20. And then Georgia advances to the national championship.
Oregon, Texas, what happens?
So this is a game where can Quinn Ewers, like we were talking about earlier, can he step into that pocket and make that tight window throw? I think this is a game where you're going to see kind of some Arch Manning packages in the run game, which when I saw Arch run that touchdown run against Texas A&M, I was at Superior Grill. I wanted to throw my drink up in the air. I was so excited. It was incredible. And so I think you're going to see some Arch Manning. You're going to see some Quinn Ewers. I think you're going to find ways to have Texas. Texas is going to find ways to manipulate Oregon's defense. But I just think Oregon's going to be so prepared for this game. Not saying that Texas isn't prepared, but what Dan Lanning has instilled in these guys, I think this is Oregon's year to go up against a Texas and a Georgia and be like, this is the year we're doing it. We're gonna outsmart you. We're gonna out physical you. And we're gonna outrun you. All phases of football. I think Oregon's gonna win. I would say by 7 to 10 points. I'll give it like a 31 to 24. Oregon.
Okay. All right. Well, you have Oregon and Georgia in the finals. I'm sure you're not alone in that projection.
I think like 99% of the country wants that projection. But look, don't be surprised if that's not the projection. I mean, there's other teams in this field that can easily make it. I could see a sleeper in Tennessee going the way. I could see a sleeper in Penn State might just wake up one morning and be like, we're sick of losing big games. But I think Oregon and their depth on defense and offense wins them the game. And I think this is a game where like Carson Beck has like one of those bad games that you've seen this year, like against Georgia Tech and against Ole Miss. And I think Oregon wins the national championship this year. I really do. I think this, and it's going to be monumental in the college football landscape for all these recruits that are coming to college and they're saying, hey, you do not have to be in the SEC to win it all. And I think Oregon winning it this year is going to set that precedent.
Swami says, what's your final score?
I think it's going to be actually a lower scoring game, boring first half type game. I think Oregon pulls away, and I think they win by 14. And I think it's because of like a late like pick six to end it. Kind of like how the Georgia-Alabama game was a couple of years ago when they had that late pick six. I'm gonna say 31-17, Oregon.
I like it. Well, there you have it. That's the perfect bracket. We've done it. I know we haven't missed one thing. I think every score is going to be perfect too, actually.
Yeah. And ESPN, where's my $1 million?
Yeah, it's time. We'll fill that one out and make it official. If you have one single player off the top of your head, one single player to watch across the entire bracket here, who is it? Who's your sleeper, under the radar guy who you want to see what they do on this gigantic stage?
On this gigantic stage, man. Oh God, that makes me so excited. That question. Look for. I'm trying to think. Obviously everybody's going to say Ashton Gentil, but for me, under the radar guy, look for running back for SMU, Rashard Smith. If SMU can get Rashard Smith running the football on Penn State's defensive line, I think if he gets 100+ yards, he's going to be all over ESPN. And he's had a really good year. He's had like 1,200 rushing yards. They really want to give him the ball as much as possible at SMU. So I would say Rashard Smith.
All right. I love it. Where can people find you? Where can we find the Chris Lane Show? We're putting the pressure on for you to get it back up and running.
I know. It's been terrible of me. I would say Apple Podcast or Spotify. I wish I could be on YouTube, but I'm not as handsome as Brent Peus over here. So I'm gonna. And it's funny. I probably should have shaved, and probably should have combed my hair. I didn't know I was gonna have a conversation.
No. You look like a football guy. You're gonna get cleaned up for this.
But yeah, so Apple Podcasts and Spotify, you'll find the Chris Lane Show on it.
And we gotta follow.
I had Brent on it before, so listen to that one.
We gotta follow the Instagram though. What's the Instagram?
Oh, the Instagram, it's at the Chris Lane Show. It has like some underscores in between, says spaces. I post like my photo of the week. I have some cool football photos, and then I had some bets in this year earlier in the year. Take it with a grain of salt. Bet responsibly. Don't fall fast one and lose the mortgage.
All right. Final question. Same thing. Outcome and score. How do your Rebels do against the Dukies, Duke Blue Devils?
So it's sad, in this bowl era, you have Malik Murphy hitting the portal, and then their backup quarterback entered the portal too for Duke. So it's Ole Miss who, mind you, everybody's playing. The only opt-out is our middle linebacker, Poop Hall, against a third-string quarterback for Duke.
What's the line?
I think it's still
the way 14. Too early line.
The way too early line's 14, but I think I think Ole Miss wins by 50. I don't think that's for a point. The third string.
You might have to put the house on it then. In this case, do not gamble responsibly if you think they're going to win by 50 and the line is 14.
Third string quarterback for Duke, come on, Ole Miss is going to be all over that, white on rice. They're going to absolutely sling it with Jackson Dart. Which, one last thing I wanted to say before you go: when you sent me that photo of Jackson Dart and Brent Peus, I was so close to photoshopping Miles LePere on there, and I was going to post on Instagram saying my 3 favorite quarterbacks.
Hey, it's not too late. I
need to.
Yeah, similar resumes too on the field between the three of us.
Man,
all right, where are you going to watch that game? What's your setup going to look like?
And I'll be at our place in Kill, Mississippi. Man, I'll be excuse me. I'll be at that for the Sugar Bowl, January 2nd. I'll be in this house by myself, yelling profanity at the TV.
You're watching solo. Do you need a safe space for it?
Yeah, I've kind of learned that I can only watch the Ole Miss football games with a couple of people. Otherwise, I just get annoyed. I'm just like, look, I don't want to hear.
All right, Chris. Thanks for taking the time. The ball will not lie. We'll see how much of a psychic you are in just a few
We'll see.
short weeks here. Did you nail it? Did you get it all wrong? Time will tell.
And that's why I love football, because it's all fun and games until you buckle that chin strap and you're ready to hit somebody.
Exactly.
You react when you get popped in the chin.
We're going to need the comment section to pop off on this one. Tell us where Chris was wrong and where he was right. But all right, Chris, we got to do it again. I'll come back on the Chris Lane Show anytime if that's any more fuel on the fire of you starting it back up again.
Yes,
Don't
sir.
keep us waiting.
Love you, brother.
All right.
So happy we got to do this.
All right. Love you, buddy. Thanks.
All right, see you, man.